There is a voice inside your awareness that does not sound like worry, habit, or memory. It arrives with a different quality, an unmistakable clarity that cuts through mental noise. It can feel like a pull in your chest, a quiet recognition, as if something you have always known is suddenly being spoken aloud without word. You do not manufacture it the way you manufacture a plan. You do not force it the way you force motivation. It simply appears, and the moment it appears, it carries a kind of certainty your usual thoughts cannot imitate. Something in your reality is preparing to transform. Even if the surface of your life looks unchanged, same routines, same environment, same responsibilities, something is shifting underneath. This is not fantasy trying to distract you. It is not your mind playing tricks because you are bored or stressed. It is transmission. It is contact. It is the sensation of information arriving from beyond the identity you have been performing, beyond the storyline you have been repeating, beyond the limitations you have accepted as normal. Somewhere in the quantum field, whatever name you give it, universe, consciousness, source, there's a version of you already breathing inside the life you keep imagining. That reality is not reserved for someday, not dependent on luck, not waiting for permission. It is active right now. That self is already moving through a timeline where your dreams are not dramatic exceptions. They are baseline. In that timeline, the choices you are scared to make here have already been made. The steps you hesitate over here have already been taken. And something remarkable happens. When a version of you stabilizes inside a higher outcome, the signal begins to travel. That version of you starts broadcasting guidance backward through the invisible network that connects every potential you could ever inhabit. You register it as intuition, as a thought that lands with unusual confidence, as an inner direction that bypasses doubt. It does not feel like you arguing with yourself. It feels like something in you simply knows. You feel it as an impulse that tells you when to act, when to pause, when to speak up, when to wait, when to pay closer attention. Sometimes it comes as a warning. Sometimes it comes as a calm instruction. Sometimes it comes as a sudden sense of not this or yes now without explanation. And you notice how it shows up. It shows up in timing, so precise it feels orchestrated. A message arrives exactly when your soul has been asking the question. A stranger says the exact sentence your heart needed to hear. A symbol repeats until ignoring it becomes impossible. The same theme appears across different places. An idea in a book, a line in a conversation, a headline you were not looking for, until it becomes clear the pattern is looking for you. The transmission rarely begins loudly. It begins as a whisper because you are being trained. You are learning to tune into frequencies your physical senses cannot detect. You are learning to feel the field. When the field communicates, it does not rely on language the way your mind does. It operates through resonance, through vibration, through emotional truth. Your body becomes the receiving station, and your heart becomes the decoder. That is why the signal is often felt before it is understood. That is why it can arrive as chills, as warmth, as a deep breath that suddenly comes easier, as a tightening in your chest when something is misaligned, as relief when you finally tell yourself the truth. Of course, some days you will doubt everything. Some days clarity vanishes and movement feels pointless. You may look at your life and wonder whether you imagined it all. You may feel tired of listening, tired of hoping, tired of being the only one who seems to sense that something more is possible. But even during those stretches, your parallel self keeps sending the signal. The broadcast does not shut off because you had a hard week. It does not stop because you feel uncertain. It continues steady, persistent, waiting for you to be quiet enough to notice again. That is why motivation can return after weeks of stagnation. That is why you can catch your reflection and see strength you do not remember possessing. That is why you can wake up one morning with a strange calm, as if something decided for you overnight. This is alignment forming, a magnetic bridge between realities. The former identity resists. The emerging identity persists. Every vision you have ever held already occupies a dimension of existence running parallel to yours. Not in front of you waiting, not behind you fading beside you. You brush against it with every brave choice. You make contact with it when you do the uncomfortable thing instead of the familiar thing. The field recognizes readiness. And when readiness arrives, it creates pressure. It reorganizes circumstances. It shifts the path so you cross into new territory before you even realize the transition happened. This is why you feel called to abandon patterns that contradict who you are becoming. You begin losing interest in what once kept you comfortable. You begin noticing which environments drain you and which environments ignite you. You begin feeling magnetically drawn toward decisions other people question, but your soul understands. You feel hungry for something unnamed yet undeniable. You cannot explain it cleanly, but you cannot escape it either. These are not random urges. They are coordinates. They are the next reality being downloaded directly into conscious awareness. And the transmission disrupts comfort. It has no patience for excuses. It does not wait for the perfect moment. It arrives when staying the same becomes more threatening than transformation. It arrives when clinging to your old story begins to endanger your evolution. That is why the transmission can feel destabilizing, like your entire existence is being dismantled from within. Connections change, structures dissolve, identity fractures. Things you used to tolerate become unbearable. Things you used to chase suddenly feel empty. But the chaos serves a purpose. Something vast is reconfiguring your world to mirror what you are capable of becoming. Outdated versions of you are peeling away. You are being recalibrated to match your future frequency, not your historical one. You are not being tested merely to suffer. You are being refined. Each wave of uncertainty is the last remnant of who you used to be. Each obstacle is an opening disguised as opposition, and the stronger the pull becomes, the nearer the convergence is. The more you sense something trying to wake you up, the more accurate that sensation is. There is intelligence in the timing of synchronicities. There is precision in the moments that feel destined. The field is not guessing its way forward. It is directing you. The aspect of you that already holds the outcome is choreographing the steps you are taking today. You and your future self stand on opposite ends of the same bridge, both calling the other forward, one through longing, one through memory, one through desire, one through certainty. So trust the desire that keeps resurfacing no matter how much you try to quiet it. Trust the trajectory that feels like it selected you. Trust the version of yourself that refuses to fade from your inner vision. Imagination is not always wishful thinking. Sometimes it is remembrance, an echo from a timeline your consciousness is reaching toward, a preview of what you are capable of stabilizing. You are not sitting around waiting for tomorrow. Your future is transmitting to you in this exact moment. The only question is whether you will receive it. Because the transmission does not vanish when you ignore it. It intensifies. It becomes more persistent. It becomes impossible to deny. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because your evolution is not optional. The existence meant for you cannot be delayed indefinitely. The field seeks alignment. It wants coherence between the identity you perform for others and the identity you were built to embody. When those frequencies match, your world reorganizes so rapidly it appears miraculous. But miracles are often just plans fulfilled. The transmission is evidence that your life is fluid, not fixed. It is evidence the universe recognizes you as ready to shift coordinates, ready to occupy a timeline that has been holding space for your acceptance, ready to grow into the self that already operates from certainty. Listen, feel, respond. The transmission is in motion, and it is calling your name. Every potential that has ever moved through your imagination is already unfolding in an alternate you. This is not only metaphor, it is a way of describing a deeper architecture of possibility. Within the field, all timelines coexist simultaneously. Reality does not progress in a single straight line. It branches in infinite directions, like electricity through atmosphere. Each branch represents a different you experiencing a different outcome. The version who succeeded did not erase the version who struggled. They exist side by side in parallel stream. The version who surrendered to fear, the version who quit, exists next to the version who continued until the breakthrough arrived. The distinction between these realities is not chronological. It is energetic. It is about identity. It is about frequency. You sense this truth in moments when life feels like it could pivot overnight. You feel potential rising in you like ancient knowledge returning. You notice the gravity of small decisions, what you tolerate, what you refuse, what you practice, what you repeat, and you realize they carry world-shifting power. Every thought you select opens a doorway. Every emotion you cultivate generates a frequency. Each frequency tunes you into a specific version of your existence. Your awareness is the dial. You access different realities the way a radio scans stations. When your thoughts are built from scarcity, you lock into the timeline where scarcity rules your experience. When your beliefs expand, you migrate toward the timeline where potential manifests. The field mirrors who you are being, not what you are hoping. It responds to embodiment, not wishing. Inside you exists an archive of alternate selves, a version who recovered, a version who walked away from what depleted them, a version who stayed intact when circumstances looked final, a version who learned to trust internal guidance over external chaos. These versions are not somewhere ahead of you in a distant future. They are within you, dormant until choice activates them. This is why one decision can change everything, not because it creates magic out of nowhere, but because it selects a new identity, and the identity selects a new timeline. If this transmission is landing, you do not have to understand it perfectly. You only have to notice it. You only have to stop dismissing the signal as random. You only have to take the next honest step. Because the bridge is already forming, and you are already on it. You encounter these versions of yourself in dreams that feel less like invention and more like recollection. You wake with emotions that do not belong to your current circumstances, yet they are unmistakably yours. Grief from a life you never lived, relief from a decision you have not made, joy that arrives without a visible cause. Sometimes the dream is so detailed it lingers like a photograph behind your eyes, as if your consciousness briefly stepped sideways into another stream and returned carrying evidence. You encounter them in sudden flashes of a life you have never lived but recognize anyway. A street corner you have never visited feels familiar. A conversation you have never had echoes in your mind with the weight of certainty. You see yourself doing something you had been afraid to do, speaking clearly, leaving decisively, creating boldly, and your nervous system responds as if it already happened. You are not hallucinating. You are registering a signal. You encounter them in the magnetic pull towards something inexplicable, a subject that lights you up with no practical justification, a place that calls you despite your logic, a change you cannot stop thinking about, even when you try. That familiarity is not an accident. It is recognition. It is your soul identifying realities it has already witnessed. Because the field is not an abstract theory you discuss in books and forget in real life. It is the invisible substrate of every moment you inhabit. It is the fabric beneath perception. It holds the design of everything you could become. It holds the map for expansion. It holds proof of your capacity long before the physical world validates it. And when a vision feels too compelling to dismiss, that is not delusion, that is the field showing you a version of yourself, already materialized somewhere in the network of outcome. This is why certain desires do not fade. They are not whims. They are coordinate. Destiny is not predetermined. There are only pathways chosen through resonance. Your future is not a single track. It is a living network of options, each one activated by the frequency you sustain. Reality transforms the instant your internal state transforms. Identity is the mechanism that bends timeline. Become the version of you who already possesses what you want. Not by pretending, not by forcing, but by embodying the internal signature of that version, and the reality surrounding you must conform. Not because you deserve it in a moral sense, but because coherence is law. The field seeks alignment. It always brings the outer world into relationship with the inner pattern you hold consistently. You have experienced moments when fear tried to trap you inside a contracted version of self. You know the sensation, the mind rehearsing disaster, the body tightening the instinct to minimize your voice, your needs, your possibilities, yet something inside kept expanding anyway. That insistence is the voice of your greater version pulling you forward. That voice does not originate from your past. It originates from a timeline where you already shattered the limitations frightening you today. Fear is outdated information. Longing is current data, and your parallel selves do not exist in isolation. They influence each other across the invisible boundaries of time. When one version of you evolves, generates ripples through the field. Those ripples manifest here as inspiration that arrives out of nowhere, intuition that becomes louder, restlessness that refuses to let you stay still. When one version chooses power, the others receive a surge of bravery. When one version collapses, the others feel urgency to rise. You are more interconnected than you comprehend. The entire constellation of you operates like synchronized stars, distinct points of light, yet governed by the same invisible geometry. What occurs inside you never stays isolated. It broadcasts. That is why one moment of clarity can restructure everything. That is why you sometimes experience sudden confidence without an obvious cause. That is why progress in one timeline can catalyze evolution in another. Your physical senses perceive a world that moves slowly, appointments, delays schedules, visible outcomes. But consciousness navigates faster. The shift initiates long before results appear. It begins the moment you align your internal state with the version of you who has already crossed the threshold. The universe adjusts in sequential layers: first energy, then emotion, then thought, then action, then material outcome. You are transforming from the inside outward. You do not need to force your way into change. You need to match your identity with the version of you who has already changed. That version does not wait for approval. It does not negotiate with ancient doubts. It operates from knowing. It carries itself as someone who already owns the reality you desire. When you embody that same internal frequency, you enter that same timeline, not by magic but by selection. The dial is your awareness, and the station you land on is the self you practice being. There are days when the life you want feels distant. Yet distance is an illusion created by the mind's habit of measuring reality as if only the physical is real. At the level of the field, everything you desire exists at zero separation from your current moment. The gap is not spatial, it is vibrational. Shift the vibration and the gap dissolves. What seemed impossible becomes obvious. What seemed far becomes familiar. Every time you envision a better outcome, you are not inventing fiction. You are detecting the signal from a version of you for whom that outcome is already actual. Every time you feel a dream pulling you, it is because a timeline where that dream is complete is pulling you forward. The attraction runs both directions. You want that version of yourself, and that version of yourself wants to merge with you. It is not chasing you to tease you. It is calling you to converge. Infinite versions of you exist across infinite timeline, but only one becomes the one you choose to embody. You choose with every belief you permit. You choose with every boundary you establish. You choose with every risk you accept. You choose with every excuse you retire. Each choice adjusts your resonance closer to the life calling you. The field does not choose for you. It reflects you. It mirrors the energy you commit to holding. It materializes the qualities you practice daily, not occasionally, not in brief bursts of motivation, but consistently. Reality tracks identity the way shadow tracks form. Transform who you are being, and your entire universe rewrites itself around that transformation. Stand inside the energy of the version of you who already succeeded. Speak as they would speak. Move as they would move. Feel as they would feel, not as a performance for others, but as a private alignment with your own future truth. When you stabilize that frequency, the timeline where you flourish cannot remain separate. It rushes toward you with a precision that resembles fate. But fate is simply alignment sustained long enough to become visible. Many versions of you exist. Only one should lead your future. Let it be the one who already knows how powerful you can become. The moment everything begins shifting rarely announces itself dramatically. It arrives quietly, like a sudden stillness in your breath, like recognizing a thought that lands with too much truth to ignore. The breakthrough does not wait for ideal conditions. It surfaces when the field senses your identity approaching alignment with the version already inhabiting the life you are reaching toward. Something transforms internally first, not externally. You wake one morning and the world carries a different quality. Even though nothing on the surface changed, colors appear more vivid. Time feels altered for a heartbeat. Your awareness expands just enough to question limits you previously accepted without resistance. This is not confusion. This is recognition. A new timeline is making contact with your current one, and then you begin noticing patterns forming around you. You encounter someone who speaks directly to the part of your heart that has been whispering for months. You hear a phrase that feels custom designed for you alone, as if the universe borrowed a human voice to deliver a private message. You discover a symbol or message at the precise instant you were contemplating it. Synchronicities start clustering like stars, forming constellations. They point toward a direction you did not plan yet somehow always knew. Breakthrough begins when you stop believing life unfolds randomly. You start perceiving the invisible architecture behind your encounters. You sense the presence of intelligence weaving through your days. You realize events do not merely happen, they align. They align with your internal state. They align with your intentions. They align with who you are becoming. This recognition changes how you respond to your own triggers. Patterns that once generated fear begin to lose authority. Old reactions feel heavier, slower, less believable. They no longer match your nervous system. You notice yourself refusing what drains you and accepting what ignites you. You take steps that once seemed impossible, and the strangest part is how natural those steps feel, because breakthrough is memory returning from a version of you who already walked this path. The breakthrough is not one instant. It is a sequence of internal confirmations. It is the accumulation of small choices that reflect a new identity. At first, the signs feel like gentle guidance. Then they intensify. They become unavoidable. When alignment reaches critical mass, reality responds quickly. The field collapses a set of possibilities into a clearer trajectory. And that trajectory feels personal. It carries your signature. It carries your name. You begin noticing the sensation of being guided. Your body reveals truth faster than your mind. Certain opportunities generate expansion, breath opens shoulders, soften energy rises. Others contract your system, even when they look safe on paper. Breakthrough happens the moment you trust expansion and stop negotiating with contraction. You stop calling discomfort prudence when it is actually misalignment. You stop calling numbness stability when it is actually resignation. You let your intuition become the authority. You let alignment become the strategy. Then there is a moment when your future self steps closer than ever before. You feel their confidence moving through your decisions. You feel their clarity replacing hesitation. You feel their courage settling into your voice. You feel yourself speaking differently, not louder for attention, but truer because you are no longer betraying what you know. And even if you cannot see the complete picture, you know what comes next. Not because you have proof, but because the signal is unmistakable. That knowing is contact. Breakthrough shatters rules you once believed were absolute. You realize you can create without permission. You realize you can change without warning. You realize you can jump timelines, not through waiting, but through aligning. What once seemed unrealistic starts feeling inevitable. And inevitability is not arrogance, it is coherence. It is what happens when your internal frequency matches the life you have been sensing all along. So when dreams bring you strange familiarity, when flashes of another life arise, when your chest tightens around one choice and expands around another, take it seriously. Not as superstition, but as data. The field is always speaking. Your future self is always transmitting. Your job is not to force an outcome into existence. Your job is to become the version of you that the outcome already belongs to. Because the field does not respond to the person you are pretending to be. It responds to the person you consistently embody. And when that embodiment stabilizes, the convergence accelerates. You will look back and realize that what you called random events were actually coordinate. What you called restlessness was calibration. What you called breakdown was reconfiguration. And what you called imagination was the earliest form of contact, your consciousness reaching across parallel streams, remembering the self you are here to become. What once felt distant starts feeling familiar, because you are moving into a story your soul already knows. The recognition is subtle at first, like déjà vu, without a scene, like certainty, without proof. Then it deepens. You begin to sense that you are not chasing something new, so much as returning to something that has been waiting in the architecture of your life all along. The future stops feeling like a fantasy and starts feeling like a location. Not a place you hope to reach, but a reality you are already approaching. Sometimes breakthrough arrives through disruption. Something ends. Something falls apart. Something you relied on becomes unstable. The ground shifts beneath your feet, and for a moment the mind panics because it equates collapse with danger. Yet inside there is often a strange calm, a quiet certainty that this is not destruction. it is release. When a structure no longer matches who you are becoming, it cannot remain intact. The field must remove what obstructs your evolution. It must create space for the timeline that better reflects who you are now, not who you were trained to be. Breakthrough often appears disguised as challenge, an ending that feels personal, a relationship that cannot continue in its old shape, a fear resurfacing so intensely you cannot ignore it. These moments are not here to break you. They break the version of you that no longer matches your potential. They fracture the old contract you made with limitation, quietly, unconsciously, through repetition and survival. When you let the old identity die, you permit the new timeline to be born. And this is the point most people misunderstand. The breakthrough moment is not always the moment your external life improves. It is the moment your internal allegiance shifts. It is the exact point where your new identity becomes stronger than your old narrative. Nothing dramatic may be visible yet. Your calendar may look the same. Your environment may look the same. The same people may still be in your life. But an internal agreement has been made. The field has received the signal. You have changed direction. You have changed frequency. You have changed what is possible for you. Your entire system responds. Every cell in your body participates. Your posture shifts. Your attention shifts. Your expectations rise not as entitlement but as resonance. You stop preparing for disappointment and start preparing for arrival. You stop trying to prove your worth and start expressing it. You stop obsessing over what you might lose and begin focusing on what you are ready to claim. Breakthrough is where desire meets decision. It is when wanting becomes choosing. It is when possibility becomes identity. It is when hope becomes embodiment. And embodiment is the language the field responds to. You begin acting as if the future is already unfolding in your favor, and the universe responds because it must. It mirrors the state you hold consistently. There will be moments when the old version tries to return. It will attempt to convince you nothing has changed, that you were only emotional, that you were only inspired, that reality is still the same fixed cage it has always been. But you will feel the lie in its voice. You will sense the widening gap between who you were and who you are now. That discomfort is not failure. It is proof of progress. The closer you get to merging with your parallel self, the stronger the pull becomes. Breakthrough is not the finish line. It is the doorway. It is the initiation into a timeline where you no longer wait for transformation. You create it in real time with every aligned choice. Growth becomes your natural state. Synchronicities become normal. Opportunities appear without force. The impossible becomes routine. What you feel right now is not confusion. It is evolution. The pressure you experience is not punishment. It is activation. The strange timing you notice is not coincidence. It is confirmation. A profound shift is happening beneath the surface of your life. The field has already begun rearranging your reality to match the identity you are stepping into. This is the breakthrough moment. It is happening in your awareness. It is happening in your energy. It is happening in every part of you that refuses to settle for the version of life you have outgrown. The bridge is forming. The contact is strengthening. You are being aligned with the timeline where you thrive. Stay awake. Stay aware. Stay committed to the direction that feels like expansion. Because the breakthrough is here, and the next phase of your reality is already opening in front of you. And then fear appears. Fear often arrives the moment you start rising. Doubt intensifies the moment you move closer to the existence that belongs to you. This is not evidence that you are failing. This is interference. It is the former version of you fighting for survival. Every time you shift into a higher identity, the identity that once kept you contained panicked. It does not care about your fulfillment. It cares about familiarity. It wants predictable routines, even when they constrain you. It wants safety, even when it stifles you. It wants control, even when that control slowly destroys your potential. The old self would rather keep you inside a life that feels comfortable than allow you to enter a future requiring courage. Interference begins in your thinking. Suddenly your mind becomes a battleground, where fear argues persuasively and possibility gets dismissed as delusion. Thoughts appear with a sharp, convincing tone. What if this doesn't work? Who do you think you are? You've tried before. It's safer to wait. These are not always protective warnings. Often they are tactics engineered to keep you inside the boundaries you are finally ready to transcend. The old self knows your vulnerabilities. It knows which memories to replay. It knows which insecurities to press. It knows exactly what to say to make you hesitate. It uses the familiar voice of your past to convince you that change is too risky, too impractical, too uncertain. It will remind you of every failure. It will amplify every fear. It will highlight every disadvantage, not because these things represent real danger, but because your evolution threatens its existence. Interference also shows up in your emotion. You feel tension rising when you step into bigger choices. You feel guilt when you prioritize your expansion. You feel anxiety when opportunities appear faster than your old beliefs can process. You might feel sadness for no clear reason because part of you is grieving the identity you are leaving behind. Emotional resistance is not always true. Often, it is an echo. The feelings are outdated. The path is current. One of the most camouflaged forms of interference is procrastination. Not laziness, but delay. Delay that feels justified. Delay that sounds rational. Delay that whispers tomorrow instead of now. Delay is the old self buying time, hoping you will forget the direction your soul indicated. Delay is the silent destroyer of destiny because it does not feel like sabotage. It feels like caution. It feels like planning. It feels like being responsible. But the truth is simple. When you delay, what you know is aligned. You are choosing the timeline, where alignment remains a theory instead of a reality. The moment you commit to a new timeline, your subconscious must reorganize itself. That reorganization feels uncomfortable because it disrupts patterns that once felt like home. You are not only changing behaviors, you are rewiring the foundational beliefs about who you are permitted to become. Resistance is the friction of transformation. It is the nervous system recalibrating to a new standard of possibility. In this phase, the field observes closely. It does not punish you for feeling fear. It notices whether you obey fear. The challenge is not eliminating the old self. The challenge is preventing it from leading. You cannot silence fear by arguing with it. You silence it by proving it wrong through action. Your old identity is conditioning, formed through repetition, reinforced by memory, protected by comfort. But conditioning is not destiny. It is programming waiting to be rewritten. Every time you choose your future self over fear, the old programming weakens. Every time you take an aligned step, the old identity loses authority. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming. And the old self does not only resist internally, it often tries to protect itself through external circumstances. You may notice unexpected problems appearing right as you begin expanding. Plans collapse. People question you. Obstacles emerge. Messages get delayed. Timing gets messy. It can feel as if the universe is pushing back. But often these are pressure tests. They reveal whether you are controlled by fear or guided by purpose. They show you what you truly believe when your comfort is removed. When everything seems to deteriorate at the exact moment you try to grow, that is frequently confirmation you are in a real transition. Interference rises because the shift is authentic. You are crossing the threshold, separating who you were from who you are becoming. Sometimes, interference appears as temporary comfort, a distraction, a small reward, a familiar option that says, "Stop here. You've done enough." It can look like a return to what is safe, a pause that masquerades as completion. But do not mistake comfort for alignment. Do not settle at the edge of greatness when the breakthrough waits on the other side. The old you thrives on hesitation. It loves when you replay the same decision repeatedly without moving. It loves when you search for guarantees before taking action. It loves when you keep your dream alive as an idea, because an idea cannot threaten the old identity the way embodiment can. The future self does not negotiate with limitation. It moves first. Evidence appears after. This is the order the mind dislikes, but the field requires. The universe does not test your desire. It tests your identity. It asks, do you genuinely want the life you claim to want? Or do you only want the sensation of wanting it? Wanting feels safe. Becoming requires risk. Risk is the doorway through which transformation enters, and risk does not always mean dramatic leaps. Often it means quieter, more decisive bravery, telling the truth when you would usually stay silent, setting a boundary. You have postponed starting the work without waiting for perfect confidence, choosing the uncomfortable conversation, declining the invitation that would dilute your energy, investing in yourself without external validation. These are not small choices in the field. These are identity declaration. They tell reality which version of you is leading. Now, if you notice references to a book or a product or a pinned comment, understand what matters: the principle beneath the marketing. The principle is that you are not only a receiver, you are a transmitter. You are not only picking up signals from your future self, you are learning how to become the signal, how to hold a frequency so consistently that your life reorganizes around it. Because there will be moments when you feel like quitting, moments when doubt feels louder than truth, moments when stepping forward feels heavier than stepping back, moments when your old identity pleads for relief and tries to convince you that comfort is the same as safety. In those moments, do not treat fear as an enemy. Treat it as a signpost. Fear often appears where expansion is happening. Doubt often intensifies where alignment is becoming irreversible. When you recognize interference for what it is, you stop being hypnotized by it. You understand that the mind's panic is not prophecy. It is adjustment. You understand that emotional turbulence is not proof you are wrong. It is proof you are moving. You understand that obstacles are not always a no. Often they are a request. Become more anchored, more committed, more coherent. This is where you begin living differently. You stop waiting to feel ready and start acting from the identity that is ready. You stop demanding certainty and start creating it through repetition. You stop interpreting discomfort as danger and start interpreting it as expansion. You stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start asking, "What if I succeed?" and never return to the old timeline again, because that is what is happening. The bridge is not theoretical anymore. It is structural. Each aligned choice lays another plank. Each act of courage strengthens the cables. Each time you refuse to abandon yourself, the distance between you and your parallel self collapses further. You are not becoming someone else. You are becoming who you already are in the timeline where you stop negotiating with your own potential. And as you continue, something shifts in the quality of your days. You notice that you are not fighting for transformation anymore. You are cooperating with it. You are no longer begging reality to change. You are changing the identity that reality must reflect. This is why the breakthrough feels both quiet and undeniable. It is not an explosion outside you. It is a decision inside you that cannot be undone. So when disruption arrives, do not assume it is punishment. When endings happen, do not assume you are being abandoned. When fear gets loud, do not assume you are off track. Often the opposite is true. Often the collapse is the clearing. Often the challenge is the corridor. Often the interference is the final tremor of the old timeline losing its grip. You are being aligned with the timeline where you thrive. Stay awake. Stay aware. Stay committed to what expands you. The breakthrough is not coming. It is happening. And the next phase of your reality is already opening because you are already stepping into it. These moments are invitations, quiet, relentless invitations to decide who you belong to. Not in the sense of ownership by anything outside you, but in the deeper sense of allegiance. Do you belong to the version of you that fears the unknown, or to the version that builds it? Do you belong to the identity that survived by staying small, or to the identity that was designed to expand? Every significant transformation in your life will trigger a final battle with your past identity, not because you are weak, but because you are evolving. Growth is the most threatening force to the self that wanted you to remain the same. The closer you are to stepping into your new reality, the more aggressively the old reality tries to reclaim authority. It does this through emotion, through memory, through the familiar voice that once sounded like wisdom. In these moments, remember the voice telling you to stop is the voice of a self you no longer want to be. The discomfort you feel is evidence of expansion. The fear you feel is the signal that you are touching possibility. And the resistance you feel is proof that transformation is in motion. Interference is not the enemy. It is the indicator. It appears in the exact places where the leap must happen. It flares up at the threshold, right at the edge, where your old identity loses grip. That is why it can feel personal and persuasive. It is not random. It is targeted. When fear becomes loud, choose the voice of the one you are becoming. When hesitation appears, move anyway. When the old identity tries anchoring you in the past, choose the action that reflects your future. This is what reclaiming control looks like. It does not feel like confidence at first. It feels like choosing movement while your hands are shaking. It feels like breathing through doubt and still taking the next step. You are not losing control. You are taking it back. You are not breaking down. You are breaking free. The old you is not stronger. It is just louder. But volume does not equal truth, and familiarity does not equal alignment. The field responds to the identity you reinforce. A single aligned action carries more power than 1,000 thoughts fueled by fear. Continue. Even shaking, continue. Even doubting, continue. Even unsure, continue, because every step you take while afraid is a step that rewrites who you are. Interference is often the final sign that the transformation is working. The version of you that once controlled your life is beginning to fade. The identity that once limited you is losing power. The timeline that once confined you is breaking apart. Keep moving. Keep expanding. Keep choosing the self that feels like destiny rather than history. The resistance will not last, but the reality waiting for you will. Now notice something important in many scripts like this. There is a call to comment below or subscribe to prove commitment. But the truth is simpler and more powerful. You do not need a public ritual to confirm your transformation. You need a private decision that you obey. If a declaration helps, let it be internal, spoken in the quiet of your own mind, with full responsibility behind it. Not as a performance, but as an energetic contract. I choose the frequency of my highest self. I am no longer negotiating with limitation. I am no longer romanticizing delay. I am no longer outsourcing my future to fear, because the moment you begin rising, the part of you built from old beliefs will try pulling you back. This is not a sign you are wrong. It is a sign you are changing. When new identity starts taking form, past identity feels threatened, and it fights. It fights through thoughts that once sounded like guidance. Now they sound like fear pretending to protect you. What if you fail? What if they judge you? What if this is too much? What if nothing changes? These questions do not always arrive to guide you. Often they arrive to trap you inside a version of life you have already outgrown. The old you prefers predictable pattern. It wants routine that keeps you safely inside the known. It does not care if the known feels empty. Familiarity feels safer to it than growth. It will try convincing you that comfort equals happiness. It will try making you believe that limitation equals stability. It wants you manageable. It wants you unchanged. You can feel this battle in your body. Tightness in your chest when you consider a bigger step. A wave of anxiety when you begin something new. A strange heaviness when you are close to breakthrough. The nervous system often responds to unfamiliar expansion as if it were danger because it confuses new with unsafe. But discomfort is not danger. It is evolution. It is your system learning a new baseline, recalibrating to a higher frequency, adjusting to the reality you are about to inhabit. Interference becomes real and obvious right when the shift turns undeniable. The moment you make a bold decision, something unexpected tries shaking your confidence. A plan falls apart. A person disappoints you. A setback appears that tempts you to question why you started. This is not always coincidence. Sometimes it is a test of identity. Are you returning to who you were, or continuing to become who you are meant to be? The old you remembers every moment you felt small. It remembers every time you backed down. It knows your history and uses it to obstruct your future. It repeats your old story like a broken recording. You failed before. You might fail again. Better to stay where things are predictable. Better to shrink than risk exposure. Better to remain unseen than risk being judged. But there is a deeper part of you that refuses that narrative. Something inside you knows you have more to give. Something inside you knows the life calling you is closer than you think. Something inside you knows that growth demands sacrifice, not sacrifice in the sense of suffering for its own sake, but sacrifice as release. You cannot evolve without releasing the version of yourself that was built only to survive instead of flourish. Survival patterns are not wrong. They were intelligent responses to earlier chapters, but they do not get to author the next one. Interference does not only resist change, it disguises itself as logic, tries to make fear sound intelligent. Wait until you feel ready. Wait until you have more certainty. Wait until you have more time, more money, more support, more proof. But readiness is not a requirement for transformation. You become ready by moving anyway. Proof does not always come before action. It comes after identity. You prove the new self is real by obeying it. The biggest trap of interference is the pause, not the stop. The pause that feels harmless. The hesitation that slowly becomes avoidance. The plan you said you would start tomorrow. The opportunity you promised to revisit later. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes someday. And someday becomes never. The old identity survives through delay, because delay keeps your future theoretical. As long as you are planning, the old self stays safe. As long as you are considering, you do not have to face the vulnerability of becoming. So when you feel yourself retreating into old behavior patterns, do not panic. Notice what is happening. Your system is adjusting to a higher frequency. Pressure rises because the upgrade is real. Fear rises because courage is active. Resistance rises because possibility is expanding. Interference often repeats the same thought in different disguises. You are not enough. You are not ready. You are going to lose. You do not deserve this. But these thoughts do not belong to the future self. They belong to the self that remembers pain and wants to avoid repeating it. The future self has no memory of limitation. It only knows capability. It does not require permission to exist. It does not ask fear for approval. It moves. You do not need to eliminate fear. You only need to stop obeying it. You do not need to erase doubt. You only need to move through it. Growth is not the absence of resistance. Growth is the decision that resistance will not decide for you. Your old identity will always choose what keeps you safe. Your future identity will always choose what helps you expand. Which one you listen to determines which timeline you experience. When resistance appears, the question becomes simple. Who is in control right now? The self you want to leave behind, or the self you are stepping into? As you grow, there will be moments where the old you screams louder than ever. This is not regression. This is the final push from a disappearing timeline. This is the last attempt of a dying version of your story to keep you inside its familiar boundaries. When you feel the tension rising, recognize the truth. You are standing at the doorway of transformation. The shaking is not a sign to stop. It is a sign to step through. The field does not respond to who you were. It responds to who you are becoming. Every aligned action strengthens the new frequency. Every step you take while afraid upgrades your identity. Every time you choose expansion over comfort, the universe reorganizes around that choice. Your transformation creates turbulence, because movement through realities creates friction at the boundary of the old and the new. But turbulence is proof you are moving. And here is the nuance that changes everything. The old you is not your enemy. It was necessary. It protected you. It carried you through chapters that required endurance. It built coping mechanisms when resources were limited. It learned strategies when you did not feel safe. You do not need to hate it. You need to stop letting it lead. You thank it. You release it. You move forward. The voice of fear will not disappear overnight, but it will lose power each time you refuse to let it drive. Its authority weakens through non-compliance. Its grip loosens through consistent action. Breakthrough is already in motion. The shift is already happening. Resistance is simply the old system trying to hold a position it no longer has permission to hold. Keep choosing the future. Keep choosing the frequency that feels like truth. Keep choosing the identity that feels like growth. The interference will fade. The new timeline will stabilize. And the version of you that once felt impossible will become the one you wake up in every day, not as a special peak state, but as your baseline. This is the moment where the old you fights hardest. This is also the moment where the new you wins. Not because the new you is louder, but because the new you is truer. Not because the new you never feels fear, but because the new you refuses to outsource life to fear. Not because the new you has perfect confidence, but because the new you has commitment. Commitment is what makes the bridge solid. Commitment is what turns contact into convergence. Commitment is what transforms a signal into a life. So stay with yourself here. Do not abandon the moment of tension. Do not interpret the discomfort as a verdict. Let it be what it is, the nervous system upgrading the identity, shifting the timeline, reorganizing. Continue with the smallest next step. If that is all you can manage, send the message, make the call, write the first page, show up, set the boundary, begin. Then do it again and again, not because you are trying to force the universe, but because you are teaching your system, who is leading now. You are not here to consume transformation as an idea. You are here to embody it. And embodiment is not dramatic. It is consistent. It is repeated alignment. It is choosing the future self when the past self begs for relief. It is telling the truth when it would be easier to stay quiet. It is walking forward when your mind is still negotiating. It is allowing the new identity to become real through action. This is the space where transformation happens. This is the space where you stop waiting for life to change and start becoming the change life must reflect. The old story no longer gets to define you. The new story is already forming around your choices. The field is responding. The bridge is strengthening. The timeline where you thrive is not a distant promise anymore. It is the reality you are actively selecting, one aligned decision at a time. Stay in this conversation. Stay close to this level of awareness, not because you need a constant stream of words, but because repetition matters. The more consistently you expose yourself to this frequency, the frequency of responsibility, expansion, and truth, the faster your reality begins to shift to match it. What you repeatedly focus on becomes familiar, and what becomes familiar becomes normal. Normal becomes embodied. Embodied becomes real. Connection with your parallel self is not a mystery reserved for rare people. It is protocol, sequence of internal alignments and practical choices that tunes you into the frequency of the version of you who already lives the life you want. That version is not waiting in the future as a reward for endurance. It exists now as an active reality within the field. And the field responds to identity more than intention. You can intend anything, but what you consistently embody is what reality recognizes. The first step in the protocol is awareness. Notice how intuition speaks. It rarely shouts. It arrives as calm, knowing truth, without evidence, clarity that lands before your mind has time to argue. It can feel like a quiet yes in your chest, or a grounded no that makes your body relax, even if your mind resists. When a thought arrives with confidence before doubt forms, treat it as a message. Do not immediately dissect it. Do not talk yourself out of it. Recognition itself is response. The moment you acknowledge the signal, the bridge strengthens because you are training your nervous system to trust higher guidance over habitual noise. The second step is resonance. Resonance is not daydreaming about the future. It is becoming compatible with it. You match the frequency of the future self by embodying how they think and how they move. Stand the way they would stand. Speak the way they would speak. Make decisions from their level of certainty. This does not mean arrogance. It means coherence. You do not wait for success to feel like success. You feel like success, so the timeline where success exists can recognize you. The field does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. The third step is emotional alignment. Your emotions are signals that reveal whether you are moving toward congruence or away from it. When you feel excitement that is clean expansion without desperation, pay attention. When you feel your chest open, pause and absorb what that openness is telling you. Positive emotion is not just being happy. It is proof of resonance. It is the field showing you that the direction you are choosing matches the identity ready to emerge. Follow the feeling that opens you, not the one that closes you. Calm expansion is often a clearer compass than frantic motivation. The fourth step is action, not massive action-aligned action. A small step becomes powerful when it is taken from the new identity. If the version you are becoming would make the call, make the call. If they would walk into the room, walk into the room. If they would say yes, say yes. If they would say no, say no. The universe calibrates to decisions, not wishes. It is your choices that announce identity. Every aligned action signals, this is who is leading now. And when identity leads, outcomes reorganize. The fifth step is presence. When you think too far ahead, you activate fear. When you replay the past, you activate limitation. Contact exists most clearly in the now because the parallel self communicates through subtle real-time shifts, sensations, impulses, inner direction that appears in the moment you need it. Stay here. Feel what your body tells you. Your body knows when your old identity is speaking and when your higher identity is directing. The mind rationalizes. The body registers. Presence is how you hear the transmission without distortion. The sixth step is gratitude. Not performative gratitude, but recognition. Every sign of alignment deserves acknowledgement because acknowledgement amplifies. When a synchronicity appears, pause and thank the field. When an opportunity arrives, let appreciation rise before you act. Gratitude is a signal amplifier. It confirms you recognize what is already arriving, and reality tends to deliver more to the person who can perceive what is already unfolding. Gratitude trains you to see progress instead of only noticing what is missing. The seventh step is openness. Guidance will not always arrive in the form you expect. The next step might come through a person you least predict. It might come as a sudden interest you cannot explain. It might come as a change in environment, a shift in desire, a door that opens in a direction you did not plan. Do not judge the path too quickly. Be willing to follow the pull, even when the map is not clear. The version of you who thrives knows the route. Your role is to stay receptive long enough to recognize it. The eighth step is detachment from the old story. You cannot communicate with the future self while clinging to the identity you are leaving behind. Release the belief that you must struggle to deserve more. Release the fear that success will cost you love. Release the assumption that you need evidence before you can believe in yourself. The new timeline requires a new narrative. It requires you to stop interpreting your life through the lens of your old limitations. The past may explain you, but it does not get to define you. Detachment is how you stop feeding a storyline that keeps recreating itself. The ninth step is silence. In stillness, messages surface. Silence is not emptiness. It is signal clarity. Let the mind soften. Let the internal noise settle. Let intuition rise. Spend a few minutes each day breathing into the center of your chest. Ask the field for clarity, then stop asking. Stop pushing. Let the field speak. Answers arrive when the inner environment becomes quiet enough to hear them. Silence is where you notice what you already know. The 10th step is consistency. One moment of alignment opens the door. Repeated alignment keeps it open. You are building a new frequency inside your nervous system, and repetition stabilizes identity shift. Every day, choose one action, one thought, or one feeling that belongs to the future timeline. Small moves accumulate into irreversible transformation. This protocol is not a ritual you perform once. It is an operating system for how you think, feel, and behave. The more you live inside this frequency, the more the separation between you and your parallel self dissolves. And notice what happens as the distance collapses. Synchronicities intensify. The signs multiply. Opportunities converge. Your parallel self is not teaching you from above. They are reminding you from within. You already carry the intelligence of your next version. Your only task is to remove the interference that keeps you from hearing it. When doubt appears, breathe deeper. When hesitation tempts you, act sooner. When fear grows louder, choose anyway. Alignment is not about forcing outcomes. It is about becoming the kind of person for whom those outcomes are normal. When the internal state rises, the external reality must catch up. The field mirrors identity. The world becomes a reflection of what you repeatedly believe about yourself, what you embody, not what you claim. Trust the instructions that arrive. They may not make sense to logic. They will always make sense to evolution. If you feel a pull to move, act. If you feel a pull to release, let go. If you feel a pull to explore, follow it. These impulses are navigation points from the version of you who already knows where you end up. Contact feels like confidence without proof, courage without certainty, love without condition. Your future self operates from trust. To merge with that version, you adopt the same trust that the path exists even before you see it. The protocol does not create the connection. The connection already exists. The protocol strengthens it. You are not reaching for a future. You are aligning with a reality that has been calling you since the moment your desire first appeared. Desire is not random. It is memory. It is recognition. You are not becoming someone new. You are returning to the version of you that was always meant to lead. The life you want already exists in another timeline. Every aligned step collapses the distance between who you were and who you are ready to be. Listen to the signals. Honor the alignment. Move when you are guided. This is the contact protocol. And every moment you follow it, you walk closer to the reality that has been waiting for you to step inside. And understand this reality does not always change slowly. Sometimes it collapses. One identity falls, another takes its place. Everything that no longer aligns with who you are becoming begins to dissolve. This collapse is not destruction. It is recalibration. The field reorganizing the entire structure of your life to match the frequency you have chosen. At first, the collapse can feel like chaos. Plans you depended on stop working. People who once made sense begin to drift. Opportunities that once felt promising disappear. You question whether you made a mistake. You wonder if you should have stayed where things were predictable. But the collapse is proof of progress. The timeline you are leaving cannot hold you anymore. When the collapse begins, your inner world shifts faster than your outer world can keep up. Thought patterns change. Beliefs dissolve. Desires evolve. What once satisfied you suddenly feels too small. What once defined you now feels inaccurate. You start to feel unfamiliar even to yourself. That unfamiliarity is not confusion. It is expansion. It is the new identity activating. The collapse removes what was built on fear. It clears attachments rooted in insecurity. It breaks illusions of limitation carried forward from the past. It exposes the truth beneath your coping strategies. When collapse happens, you are no longer compatible with the old timeline. You do not belong there. Reality must update to reflect that truth. So, do not rush to fix what is breaking. Let it break. Let what cannot continue fall away. Not everything that ends is a loss. Some endings are exits from rooms you outgrew. Some disappearances are protection. Some failures are the field refusing to let you settle for a version of life that cannot contain you anymore. The collapse is the protocol completing its work. It is coherence enforcing itself. It is the universe aligning with the identity you have finally chosen. Stay present while it happens. Stay consistent while it unfolds. Keep choosing the frequency that feels like truth. The old structure dissolves, so the new structure can appear not as fantasy, but as the natural consequence of who you have decided to become. The field does not take anything without preparing something greater to replace it. When one timeline collapses, another rises to meet you. But you must endure the in-between, the space where the old is gone, but the new is not yet visible. This is the most uncomfortable part of transformation. The void, the uncertainty, the silence where doubt tries to rewrite the story and convince you that you are lost simply because you are no longer where you used to be. Yet within this silence, a new structure is forming. You do not see it immediately because it is being built beneath your awareness, underneath what your mind can measure. The field upgrades in the background long before evidence appears in the physical world. That delay is not punishment. It is construction. It is integration. It is reality reorganizing itself around your changed identity, while your senses still expect the old arrangement. Collapse is a sign that you no longer tolerate what you once accepted. That shift alone is enough to change your destiny. When your standards rise, the universe must adjust its delivery. You cannot demand new outcomes while remaining loyal to old agreements. The moment you decide that certain experiences are no longer acceptable, certain dynamics, certain compromises, certain self-betrayals, reality begins removing whatever cannot meet your new baseline. People notice your energy is different. Some move closer, some move away. The ones who stay are aligned with the timeline you are entering. The ones who leave belong to the timeline you are exiting. This is not cruelty. It is coherence. It is the physics of alignment. A new frequency cannot carry old attachments that were only possible under the previous version of you. So do not chase what tries to leave. Do not cling to what resists growth. The collapse makes space for expansion, space for abundant, space for alignment. You are not losing anything. You are shedding. The old self is dissolving, so the true self can emerge without interference. And this is where the mind struggles, because it interprets release as loss. It interprets emptiness as danger. It interprets uncertainty as failure. But the field is not dismantling you. It is removing what you outgrew. It is clearing the outdated architecture, so the new reality can take form without being distorted by the old blueprint. During collapse, the field tests your loyalty to your new identity, not through suffering, but through choice. When certainty disappears, will you return to the familiar, or will you continue into the unknown, the future you calls from the other side? The collapse is the bridge. You either cross, or you turn around. And turning around rarely looks dramatic. It looks like rationalizing. It looks like postponing. It looks like going back to what is predictable, because predictability feels like proof. But predictability is not proof of alignment. It is only proof of repetition. Your nervous system might panic because old protection patterns activate. They try convincing you that collapse means danger, but collapse means freedom. The walls that once enclosed you are falling apart. The ceiling that kept you from rising is cracking open. You are being released, not punished. The collapse is not a crisis. It is an initiation, a passage into the timeline where your potential becomes your foundation. In this phase, the universe removes distractions with unusual precision. Anything that slows your evolution becomes exposed. Anything that contradicts your new frequency becomes too uncomfortable to continue. You might find yourself unable to tolerate conversations you once endured. You might lose interest in habits you once relied on. You might feel irritation toward compromises that previously felt normal. This discomfort is not instability, it is accuracy. Your system is refusing misalignment. Your body is becoming honest. You may feel emotional waves rising without clear reason. Grief for what you are letting go of. Fear of the unknown. Excitement that feels almost forbidden. Let every emotion move through you. Do not weaponize your feelings against yourself. They are clearing space inside your heart space, for the future space, for abundant space, for the identity that fits the life you are claiming. You are not falling apart. You are falling into alignment. You are not being broken. You are being rebuilt. Collapse also exposes your true values. You discover what matters once the noise fades. You discover who supports your growth and who fears it. You discover which dreams were never yours and which ones belong to your soul's agenda. Clarity arrives like a quiet voice that becomes louder each day. Trust that voice. It knows where you are going. The most powerful moment of collapse. When you no longer apologize for wanting more. When you stop shrinking to keep others comfortable. When you stop asking for permission to evolve. That is the moment reality shifts permanently. There is no return. What collapses was never meant to be part of your next chapter. If it belonged in your future, it would not fall away now. Release the urge to rescue what is dying. Let the timeline you have outgrown complete its cycle. You do not owe your old life another second. You do not owe your previous identity a lifetime of loyalty. You honor it for what it did, you thank it for how it carried you, and then you let it go because the cost of clinging has become too high. Every collapse contains a message. The version of you who belongs to the next timeline has taken command. You are being guided, not pushed, guided by a vision you can feel, even if you cannot fully explain it. Guided by a strength that surprises you. Guided by a belief you did not have before. The quantum shift begins when your identity changes. The collapse happens when your environment adjusts to match that identity. The process is not always graceful, but it is precise. Not one thing is removed that you truly need, and not one thing remains that slows your rise. So breathe into the collapse. Welcome it, not with forced positivity, but with recognition. This is the sign that the future is no longer a distant possibility. It is forming right now. The field has already selected the path that aligns with your highest self, and that path requires space that only appears when the old structure falls. What feels like loss is clearing. What feels like chaos is construction. What feels like endings are opening. You are witnessing the death of a timeline that kept you small and the birth of a reality that reflects who you truly are. Hold your ground. Stay aligned. Trust the direction that feels like expansion. This collapse is not the end. It is the moment your future begins to materialize. And then something subtle changes. The version of you who already lived your breakthrough is not separate from you anymore. It is not a distant dream. It is not a silent observer watching from another timeline. It has returned. It is here. It is moving through your thoughts, your instincts, your choices, and you can feel it. There are moments now when you act with a confidence that surprises you. Moments where fear tries to speak, but your response is calm and direct. Moments where you make decisions without overthinking, because something inside you knows what comes next. That knowing is not imagination. It is memory. It is the consciousness of your future self integrating into your present identity. The future you no longer whispers. It leads. It guides your attention toward the right people and the right opportunities. It removes your interest from what drains you. It pushes you into rooms you once believed were too big for you. Changes your posture, your tone, your standards, and your willingness to be seen. The return of the future self changes everything, because you are no longer driven by who you were. You are driven by who you are becoming. This version of you carries no doubt about your direction. It does not question your worth. It does not apologize for wanting more. It does not shrink itself to protect the comfort of others. It stands fully in the truth that you are capable, that you are built for the reality you once believed was out of reach. You feel the shift in identity. You are not hoping anymore. You are knowing. You are not wishing anymore. You are claiming. You are not waiting for permission. You are moving as if success has already happened because, in another timeline, it has, and that timeline is collapsing into this one. Every action you take now carries the energy of alignment. Every step becomes a declaration. You are no longer acting just to survive. You are acting to expand. You are acting to rise. You are acting from the standard of the identity that already holds the outcome. This is the integration. This is the return. This is the moment where the future is no longer separate from the present, and you notice life responds differently to you. People treat you with a respect they did not offer before, not because you demanded it, but because you became congruent. Opportunities appear without force. Doors open without begging. You attract what belongs to your new frequency, not because you chase it, but because you embody it. The universe recognizes you by your energy, not your effort. You stop looking backward for answers. The past has nothing new to offer you. You have graduated from the level where your fears were created. You no longer fight those fears with endless analysis. You rise above them until they cannot reach you. This is evolution. This is identity shifting the structure of reality. The future you sees life through a different lens. Challenges become activation points. Discomfort becomes confirmation. Change becomes privilege. Everything becomes part of a larger design. There is no panic here, no frantic grasping. There is only movement, guided by purpose, steady, deliberate, aligned. And the return is not a single moment. It is ongoing. Each day, more pieces of the future self integrate into your behavior. Each day, your actions match a reality that once felt impossible. Each day, you step deeper into a timeline where your potential is the foundation. You stop asking how long it will take. You understand time bends to identity. You understand alignment accelerates manifestation. You understand that once the mind and the field agree, once your internal state becomes coherent, the physical world cannot resist reflecting the outcome. This is transformation, internal first, then external, invisible first, then undeniable. The future self returns because you met it halfway. You listened to the signal. You recognized the sign. You survived the interference. You honored the collapse. And what arrives now is not luck and not coincidence. It is inevitability, the natural conclusion of sustained alignment. You are not becoming powerful. You are remembering you already are. You are not stepping into the unknown. You are stepping into the version of reality that has been waiting for you to claim it. You are not begging for guidance. You are merging with the part of you that has always known the path. From this moment forward, you carry a different presence. A presence that tells the world your direction is decided. A presence people can feel before you speak. A presence that changes rooms without forcing, because coherence has weight. The future you is fully active, and the story you are stepping into will feel like destiny unfolding in real time, not because it was written for you, but because you finally agreed to write it from the place that can hold it. So trust the new impulses rising in you. Trust the clarity that arrives without explanation. Trust the boldness that feels like it comes from somewhere greater. It does. It comes from you, the highest version, the aligned version, the returned version. The timeline has shifted. The merge is not a dramatic finish. It is a steady beginning. You are no longer reaching for your future. You are walking inside it. And if you want a concrete anchor, something practical, not performative, choose a single word that captures the frequency you are committing to embody right now. Not yesterday's energy, not someday's energy, this moment's energy. Let that word become your operating principle today. Let it guide your choices when uncertainty returns. Let it remind you who is leading when fear tries to speak. Because the field is always listening. Your future self is always present. The reality you have been imagining is not waiting for perfect timing. It is waiting for you to step into the frequency that makes it inevitable. Breathe. Stand tall. Move forward. The call has been answered. Now walk into what is already yours.